would be honored if you would join us.
Greetings, and welcome to another YouTube episode of Film Stories with me, Dan Cooper. And today I want to take a quick look at a story that's been buzzing around the internet like a manic fly over the past few days. And like last week, with our look at the upcoming Bill and Ted Face the Music, lay out a little context to the situation. So the news, whilst not yet entirely official, but it's looking very much like Robert Pattison is set to play the Dark Knight in the noir-tinged, character-driven Batman movie that director Matt Reeves seems to have been working on forever. Naturally, the internet had a word or two to say about this. A petition duly sprang up to renounce Pattison, but the general outrage this time seems to have been happily tempered by an appreciation for some of his really quite impressive work away from blockbusters like the Twilight series. If you haven't seen Pattison in films like David Cronenberg's Cosmopolis or The Lost City of Z, you absolutely should. They're kind of interesting character studies that often tend to be the making of an actor. Roles like those certainly didn't hurt Christian Bale, for example, ahead of him donning the Batsuit in 2005 for Batman Begins. So, anyway, good news then on the Batman casting front. Hopefully, The Batman, as it's titled at the moment, can finally get some traction. This week's film story then. So I've chosen, just to show that the internet is not the be-all and end-all when it comes to Batman casting-related outrage, I've chosen to go back to 1989 and look at just one aspect, one sliver of a film story from Tim Burton's first Batman film, which in many ways paved the route for the superhero deluge that has followed. When Burton initially announced that he would be casting Michael Keaton as the Dark Knight, there was, if you don't know this story already, I'm pretty sure that you can guess what I'm about to say, there was, yep, you guessed it, outrage. Only this was kind of 1988, and this was pre-internet outrage. What makes pre-internet outrage so special, I hear you ask? Well, pre-internet outrage would be largely defined by two characteristics. One, it took a lot of effort to display your dissatisfaction in the days before the World Wide Web. There was no simple upvoting of a post on Reddit or just clicking on a petition in those days. No, sir. If you wanted to register your fury as a fan, you would have to write a letter, walk to the post box, mail that letter, and then wait an age to see if said magazine or studio responded to you. It took commitment. Outrage took commitment. The second characteristic of pre-internet outrage was scale, too. To be heard, there had to be a lot of you. One of the sorrier elements of the web that we see these days is that clickbait tendency for reporters to find a post or a petition in some bereft corner of the internet and then write an article upon it, presenting a vocal but very, very small minority as something of really greater input than it actually is. Back in those days, though, being heard collectively meant organisation. It meant real numbers. But outrage there was when Keaton was cast as the Batman ahead of Burton's 1989 film. And I'm thankful here to ThoughtCo, who put a great article together that actually compiled some of the letters and interviews where fans decried the casting of Keaton, blaming everything from, here we go, his height, his lack of muscular structure, his lack of a square jaw, his receding hairline, the fact that he wasn't, and I quote, classically handsome, his over-reliance on comedy, his prior casting as Beetlejuice, which of course was also made alongside collaborating with Tim Burton, amongst other reasons. That was just a taster of a few as to why he wasn't fit to play Batman. If you know your Batman history, of course, you'll know that in the late 80s, when we're talking about The Dark Knight was enjoying something of a revival in the comic books as a muscle-bound grim avenger under the guidance of the legendary Batman scribe Frank Miller. And fans just didn't see Keaton meshing with this image of the Dark Knight. In fact, they looked at his previous work, looked at his physicality, and we're kind of beginning to draw comparisons with the 1966 television show, featuring, of course, the amazing Adam West. But it was that idea that Burton wasn't taking the property seriously, that perhaps there was high camp ahead, that really worried and mobilised these fans into this mass outrage. In fact, even Michael Uslan, who was the movie's producer, he had no creative input, or very little creative input, but that's an entirely different film story and is worth looking into. But Uslan, a producer on the film, initially hated the choice of Keaton. He said once in an interview, "I was the very first one that was apoplectic when I heard about Michael Keaton, that Tim Burton wanted him. I went absolutely crazy." And the difference between this fanboy and other fanboys is that I was in the inner circle. He goes on to say that Bruce Wayne is a guy so driven, so obsessed, to the point of being psychotic that audiences would have to believe that he'd get dressed up in a bat outfit and fight a guy like the Joker. And I said with Michael Keaton, can we convince them of that? He's a comedian. What's the poster going to say? That Mr. Mom, which of course is one of Keaton's films before Batman, that Mr. Mom is Batman? He's my height. He doesn't have muscles, for God's sake. He doesn't have the square jaw. But Burton ignored Uslan and the rest of the outrage, and in fact he actually screened the producer a rough cut of Clean and Sober, which was in post-production at the time, and as soon as Uslan saw that, he saw Keaton doing a serious turn, he said, "I take it all back. The guy's amazing, just amazing." And so it proved with most fans. Keaton had range, and he had lots of range. In fact, he would go on to mine that dark, psychotic side of his characters beyond Batman in his very next feature release in 1990 with Pacific Heights, a film that now it's popped up in my head. I might just have to go back and take another look at. He also returned to the weird psychology of superheroes in a number of ways, and all of them, I'd argue, successfully, from 1992's Batman Returns to kind of 2014's Birdman, and then as the Vulture in 2017's Spider-Man Homecoming. So, as it was with Keaton, Ledger, even Affleck, the initial backlash against the latest piece of major Batman casting is probably, as usual, just a wee bit premature. It's been heartening, though, to see so many think pieces praising Pattison for the work that he's done for auteur directors in the years since the Twilight films, rather than just a crazy internet outrage yell for Armie Hammer to get the role. Who knows? Maybe this is a turning point. Right, I am off to prepare myself for a Batman marathon at the Mockingbird Cinema in Birmingham this weekend by donning a rubber suit and punching evil in the face. But I'll be back here next week, for sure, with another film story. Bye-bye.